Hi all, welcome to another session on Azure infrastructure for data engineers. In this session, we will be talking about database services in Azure. So, as you all know, we have a variety of databases or database dialects available. For example, there is SQL Server, MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB. So these are all like the relational database dialects available out there. So in Azure, we have the ability to create all these kind of databases. So if you want to create SQL Server, then you can use Azure SQL Database or SQL Managed Instance. Then if you want to create MySQL Database, which is an open source MySQL engine, you can use Azure Database for MySQL. If you're interested in PostgreSQL, same way, you can use Azure Database for PostgreSQL or MariaDB. This is going to be uh, deprecated pretty soon. These are the relational database options available. If you're interested in NoSQL, there is also this Cosmos DB. This is a globally distributed multi-model NoSQL database, and this supports a document DB like MongoDB, Key Vault, Graph, or columnar family databases. In this session, we will deep dive into just one type of database, which is the SQL Server. Because for our data factory videos, I am showing how to connect to Azure SQL Server database and how to load data into SQL Server database. So you can refer how to set up that SQL Server database by watching this video. So what is Azure SQL? So traditionally, SQL Server has been around for a very long time. Many big companies continue to still use SQL Server. So what we have in Azure when we choose Azure SQL, it is not exactly like on-premise SQL Server engine experience, but what we get is a container for databases. So Azure SQL, here it says it's a managed and a secure. So what do you mean by managed? The reason we use the term managed here is traditionally if you have a SQL Server instance, you need to employ DBA database administrators to manage the instance, to install patches, to uh, do all the backup and to take care of disaster recovery or high availability or whatever features you need. You need extra people to take care of all those things. But with Azure SQL, it provides a managed SQL server so that it's a platform as a service and you don't have to do the patching, you don't have to worry about backup. You can choose the settings and Azure will take care of all those things. And for this Azure SQL, there are various deployment options available to suit your different needs. We won't go deep dive into it. My aim for this video is just to get you started and explain enough content so that you will be able to work with Azure SQL database, and as a data engineer you will be able to start using Azure SQL database. So we use Azure SQL for a platform as a service only. We are not gonna dive deep into the in-depth details about SQL Server. So before moving on, I just wanted to touch base on what are the key features of Azure SQL. So it provides automatic backups. Automatic backups in the sense, assume that you have a very big retail company. You have all the customer data, transaction data, everything, and you recently hired a new data engineer, and a junior engineer accidentally executed a SQL statement that corrupted all your data. Say, for example, there was a truncate statement accidentally that new engineer truncated your database, so all the data is gone. So it's a panic situation. But with Azure SQL, you can do a point in time recovery or restore. What does that mean? Say, for example, at 9:30 a.m. in the morning, this junior engineer has run the truncate statement. You can restore your database to a time before that query was executed. Say, for example, 9:25 or 9:29, so that you can recover all your data. So you can create a new database that will point to the state of the database as it was at 9:29, and then from the new database you can insert back to the actual one, or you can deal with it later, so the data is not lost. That is the sense of it. Then high availability, that is, the availability is built in, no clustering needed. You don't have to worry about duplicating or maintaining reader instance for back server, or those things that you need to take care of when you are handling on-premise databases. Azure SQL provides automatic high availability if one server is down, those kind of things. Scalability, scale up and down. This again, with on-premise, you need to buy the server hardware and install everything if you want to scale up. But with Azure SQL, as it is cloud-based, you can easily scale up and scale down. Um, so that is another feature available. Security, Azure SQL Server comes with firewall rules, both at server level and database level. And authentication, two types of authentication available: SQL authentication or Azure AD. Then role-based access. All these security features are also available out of the box. Now let's go to the Azure portal and check it ourselves. Let me log in. My session has timed out. So portal.azure.com and log in. So before setting up our Azure SQL, I wanted to show you the other flavors available. So let me type maybe Azure database. Now you can see all the different services available as I have shown in the slide. Azure database for MariaDB, for MySQL, for PostgreSQL. So all these features are available. Now if you want to create Azure SQL, let's type SQL. So it's a little confusing in the beginning. We have SQL Server and SQL Server databases. So SQL Server, imagine it as the container for the databases. So if you want to have a database, you should have a server, because database, you can use an analogy of apartment. So if you want to buy an apartment, first you should have an apartment building. So this SQL Server is like the apartment building, and the individual units in that apartment building are the databases. So apartment building will have a security, so that only the authorized people will get into that apartment complex. So SQL Server in the similar way take care of the firewall rules, the security, authentication, those kind of things. But the actual people are living in the apartment. Just like that, your data is residing in the databases. So if you want to buy an apartment, then you decide what kind of apartment you want, how many rooms, all those things. Just like that, you decide what kind of database, how many tables, all those things. But at the same time, you need to choose an SQL Server, an apartment building is as well. So As I don't have an SQL server or database, as I'm starting everything from scratch, I'll choose this option, SQL Server databases. As you see, I don't have anything available here. I'll create a new one. Okay. So as I don't have databases, nothing is listed in here. Let me just go back to SQL Server. So if you type SQL, there are a few other options available. Let me quickly talk about those as well. SQL Elastic Pool is, instead of, say, for example, if you have a very big company, there are multiple departments. Each department has a number of databases. Then if the usage of those databases um, is not deterministic, it may go up or down at different times. Then instead of over provisioning the resources for each database, you can have all those databases to share from a pool of resources. So all these databases will be using the virtual machine, the compute power from a shared pool, so that when one of the database usage is high and the others are idle, it's getting the resources from the shared pool. So it's a way to save some money in some scenarios. Then SQL Server instances is something that kind of mimics the full SQL Server engine experience. If you are migrating from on-prem to cloud and you want the um, SQL Server engine experience, that's something you can look into. So for our use case, we will just need Azure SQL Server. So we will create one. So before that, sorry, SQL Server. In here, you can see that SQL databases. There is no SQL databases here. So what I can do is, I can click on create here. Okay, so first I need to choose the resource group. I'll choose existing resource group. If you don't have a resource group, you can click here and create one. A resource group is just a way of grouping them together for cost monitoring, as well as if you are just doing it for demo purpose, and later on if you want to delete everything later to that demo, you just go and delete the resource group. So all the resources created for that demo you can delete in a single click. Now I need to give a name for the database. I'm gonna give it algorithm demo db, and then it's asking for a server. So if you want to buy an apartment cannot exist without an apartment complex, the building. That building is the SQL server. So we don't have a server. So what we can do is, if you have a server, it will get listed here. As we don't have a server, in the first time you need to create a server as well. Once you have a server, if you want to have multiple databases, then you can just choose the same server, and one server can have multiple databases, just like one apartment building can have multiple apartments. One SQL server can have multiple databases. So for now, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to name it algorithm demo server. Okay, I cannot have high underscore. Okay, so this location I cannot choose. So for now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to choose what is the location for my data factory. So here Canada Central is the location. Let me try to choose the same location to avoid any egress. Canada Central. Okay, it is available. And then For authentication, I would recommend using SQL authentication. And when you choose SQL authentication, you need to provide some additional information. So server admin login, I'm gonna name it admin, or I'll choose SA admin. Okay, I'm gonna note it down so that SA admin, and then I need to choose a password. It should have a number. Okay. Okay, so let me save it. And now for the redundancy, this is not production critical one, so I'm just gonna choose the locally redundant. I don't need to have backup if one region also fails. This is more expensive option. I just want the cheapest option available. So I'm also gonna choose development as the environment and locally redundant storage. Then it's gonna calculate the cost and everything. Okay, so I'm just gonna click create. So estimated storage cost $5.26 USD, compute cost 0.00174 USD per second. So depending on how much time your queries takes to execute, that will get added up. So we are paying separately for the storage and compute here. Storage is the cost for storing the actual data. So it will take a couple of minutes for it to get deployed. I'm just gonna pause and come back once it's deployed. So as you can see, it's deploying two resources. I'm creating two resources. One is the server. Then I also need to create the database, algorithm demo DB. So now that I have the server, I can create more and more databases within the same server. So the server is what gives you that DNS, the host name that we can use to connect to this. So as it shows that the SQL Server is already created, let me open another tab and see. I'm just so curious. Let's see. Almost done. Yeah, you can see the server already here. So you can have more than one server as well. Within a server, you can have more than one database as well. As of now, we only have one database. So this is our SQL Server that we have created. And it's showing the database as well, and the status of the database is online. Yeah, your deployment is complete. You can click on go to resource from here as well, and the same. You can see this is the page for the algorithm demo database. This is the page for the database, and this is the algorithm demo server. So don't confuse yourself between these two terms. The one with the little thing here, it's the server. Without that, that's the database. Now, if you come here under data management, query editor. Okay, let's go to query editor if you want to access the database. Now, let me enter the password. it is giving me an error. An instance error occurred while establishing a connection. Connection was denied because denied public network access is set to yes. So by default, when we create the SQL server, it comes with firewall rules already applied. So when we are trying to connect to that SQL server, it won't allow it. So if you want to connect to that, you need to add your IP addresses and all. Even when you're working for a company, um, the administrator or the IT people will add the whitelisted IP addresses. Only the requests from those list of IP addresses will be allowed to access the database. Let's see how to do that. So to fix this error, you need to go to your SQL server, not the SQL database, your SQL server. Okay, so this is your SQL server. And then you need to go to, let me see, security, and under networking, you can see that public network access is disabled. So instead of that, you can choose selected networks, and then you can choose add your IPv address. So when you want to connect from your own computer to this Azure portal, you can do this. If you want to add additional ones, you can add it here as well. So let me save it. So instead of disabling the public network access, I'm adding my IP address, and let me save it. Okay, the firewall rules have been updated. Now let me try again. Now I'm able to access the database, and we don't have any tables or views, anything here, but we can start creating our table. Create table, demo table 1. I will say what name. Okay, just for demo purpose, I'm just gonna create a table and see. You can write your query here, select it and click run, and then you can do select, or yeah, let me try to refresh this catalog here. You can see the table is here. So by default, it will be DBO, that schema. So let me see, select star from dbo.demo table 1, and I can select this and run it, and it don't have any values. So let me just do an insert statement as well. Insert into this table. So if you want to accept this option, you just press enter. Values, so I'm just gonna give some random value, ABC. Okay, let me run it. XYZ, and run it. And now let me run this select query again. I can see the values are inserted here. So in the left side pane, in the catalog, you can see the table, the columns in the table, the data types and everything. So this is very simple technique, that a simple table that I just created for the purpose of demoing. So this is how you can access your database from the Azure portal. But usually this is not the way people access the database. There are so many database clients out there. SQL Server Management Studio. If you have SQL Server Management Studio, that is ideal choice, most preferred choice for SQL Server. So you can connect to this particular database from your local SQL Server Management Studio. if you prefer other tools, like for example MySQL Workbench or even dbbeaver as well, dbeaver, yeah, you can try dbeaver as well. So I'll show you how to connect to this SQL database from two of the clients. There is also Azure SQL Studio, yeah, Data Studio. Azure Data Studio is another client tool that's available from Azure itself, that also you can use to connect to your database and query it. So what you can do is, so this is my dbeaver interface. If I want to create a new connection, I go here and choose SQL Server. New database connection, SQL, it's not MySQL, SQL Server. Okay, let me choose next. And then we need to provide the URL. URL is something that looks like this. So let me go back to the portal and go to the server and go to overview. So this is the server name. So let me try copying this. Instead of server name equals localhost, let me try this. And database name is algorithm underscore DemoDB. And I need to provide username and password. And let me try the test connection. So when you're doing it for the first time, it will ask you to download the drivers. So you can click download, because in order to connect to the SQL server, it needs some driver, some background code. So connected, connection test, it is successful. You can click on OK and you can click finish. So if you go to this database pane here, yeah, this is the one. So if you go to databases, you can see your database here under DBO. If you go to here, you can find your table. Now you can click on new open SQL, new SQL script. Make sure that you select the correct SQL. This is where we choose the correct database. If you have if you're using dbeaver to connect to more than one database, you need to choose the correct one here for this particular script file, masterdb algorithm DemoDB. Now you can run your query. Select start from demo table 1, and you can see the values. So from your local favorite client, you are able to connect to your Azure SQL database and run all kind of queries. In the similar way, you can do it from the SQL Server Management Studio as well. So here I have this option, connect to server. So server type, I'm gonna choose database engine. So what you can do is, you can provide the name of your server name that you copy from here in here, and then choose SQL Server Authentication, and then provide your username and password. And maybe you can choose remember password if you don't want to enter the password every time, and then click on connect. So it will, in the Object Explorer, you will be able to see the database here, and under the database you can see the table as well. Our table is here. So you can click on the new query and select star from demo table 1, and you can click the execute button to get the results. So not just select query, any kind of complex queries you can connect to the database and run those queries against your database from your local system. All these things are possible only after I have enabled my IP address to access the database. I have updated the firewall rules. So in summary, in this session we have learned how to set up an SQL Server database using Azure portal and how to connect to that SQL Server database from your local favorite database client tool. That's everything for this session. Thanks for watching.